Hello and welcome to the Remote Revolution, a podcast by Virtual Mojo. This is where we explore how modern businesses are transforming the way they work through remote teams, virtual support, and smarter operational strategies. In each episode, we bring you insights, conversations, and practical ideas to help entrepreneurs, leaders, and growing companies build efficient, scalable, and future-ready organizations. If you're looking to work smarter, scale faster, and unlock the power of remote talent, you're in the right place. Let's begin.
Welcome to Season 1, Episode 27 of the Remote Revolution, with your host Aneeq, and I am joined by Umaima as our guest. Today, we'll talk about the hidden cost of keeping the wrong remote employee too long.
Thank you so much for having me. I am really excited to dig into this one.
Yeah, it's a big one. So, to bring you, the listener, right into the room with us for this deep dive, I want you to imagine something. You're opening your laptop on a Wednesday morning.
Oh, the dreaded midweek login.
Right. You pull up a shared project file, and for the third week in a row, you have to spend like an hour fixing your coworkers' formatting errors and vague data entries before you can even begin your own job.
Yeah, and you probably don't even complain to your boss.
Exactly. You just sigh, fix the errors, and permanently lose your morning. So our mission today is to unpack a scenario that every leader dreads but rarely talks about.
The slow, quiet bleed of resources.
Yeah, exactly. When a mediocre remote worker just overstays their welcome. I mean, keeping the wrong employee is like ignoring a check engine light on your dashboard because the car is still technically rolling down the highway.
Right, it's still moving.
You know it's going to cost you eventually, but it's just so much easier to turn up the radio and pretend you don't hear the engine sputtering.
I love that check engine light analogy. It's a perfect entry point because in a remote environment, the dashboard itself is incredibly deceiving.
Oh, so?
Well, unlike a car that eventually just stalls out in a dramatic cloud of smoke in the middle of traffic, this situation is insidious. To understand why this hidden cost happens, we first have to establish why the wrong employee is so difficult to spot remotely.
Right, because the source material breaks down a very specific common case study for this, right?
Yeah, exactly. So leadership hired someone who looked fantastic on paper. And the first few weeks were completely reasonable. There was no, explosive disaster on day one.
Which makes it harder to catch.
Exactly. Instead, it was a gradual, almost imperceptible, slow drift below expectations. Deadlines slipped slightly, work needed extra revisions, things like that.
I mean, I imagine that slow drift is incredibly tough to spot because in a physical office, underperformance has a very visible footprint.
Oh, totally.
You can walk past someone's cubicle and see them just staring blankly at a wall. You can literally feel the tension in the room. Or you see other team members physically walking over to their desk to help them out.
Yes, exactly. It has a physical reality.
But remotely, I'm guessing they're technically hitting deadlines, just doing it poorly.
That is the core of the issue, which the research actually refers to as the remote mask. Remotely, an employee can easily fake the appearance of activity.
Activity versus performance.
Right. They're logging in the Zoom meetings on time. Their status icon is green on the messaging app. They're replying to threads with thumbs up emojis.
So to a manager, everything looks completely normal.
Exactly. They are technically submitting documents by the 5 p.m. deadline. The trap for leadership is mistaking that superficial activity for actual performance. They see the green dot and assume the engine is running fine.
Well, under the hood, it's falling apart.
Yeah. The actual work being submitted is incredibly shallow. The answers lack nuance. The reports require 3 rounds of heavy editing instead of just a quick proofread.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here on behalf of anyone listening who maybe just started a new remote job.
Sure, go for it.
Because the learning curve for remote work is notoriously steep. You can't just tap the person next to you and ask how the CRM software works.
Right.
Or where a specific asset is saved.
No, you have to dig for it or set up a call.
Right. So how do we distinguish between someone who is legitimately just learning the ropes and someone who is fundamentally the wrong fit? Because faking activity sounds malicious, whereas struggling to learn the culture just sounds human.
That's a really great point. And giving a new hire the grace and time to adapt is absolutely necessary. But the defining characteristic of a learning curve is that it actually curves upward.
Okay, that makes sense.
Over 3, 4, 6 months, the need for those constant revisions should organically decrease. The vague questions should sharpen into clarity as they gain context.
So they actually improve.
Right. But in a mismatched scenario, that trajectory completely flatlines. Months later, leadership in our case study was still using the exact same excuse.
Oh, let me guess. Saying they're just adjusting.
Yep. They kept saying they were adjusting to justify the exact same elementary errors.
Wow. It's basically the treadmill effect.
The treadmill effect.
Yeah, like the person is sweating, they're breathing heavily, their legs are moving incredibly fast. So to a manager walking by, it looks like a grueling workout.
Oh, I see what you mean.
But if you look down at the display, they've covered 0 actual miles. There is all this motion, all this typing and meeting attendance, but absolutely no forward momentum for the project.
That is a brilliant way to put it. And that lack of forward motion is completely invisible to leadership because they are only looking at the moving legs.
Which forces us to ask, if management doesn't see the 0 on the dashboard, who actually feels the lack of forward motion first?
It isn't the managers, it's the peers.
Right. Which brings us right back to that person pulling up the file on Wednesday morning.
Exactly. If management thinks everything is fine because the treadmill is running, the rest of the team is the one actually carrying the weight of the miles not traveled.
So the team is absorbing the cost.
The true cost of this employer was being paid in full long before leadership ever noticed a problem. The team quietly absorbed the extra work,
By doing what exactly? Just fixing things.
Pretty much. When the underperformers' output was vague or incomplete, their peers were the ones duplicating efforts. They were rewriting the messy paragraphs, double-checking the data, and basically altering their own daily timelines to account for this person's inconsistency. They essentially built a human buffer around the bad employee just to keep the team's overall output intact and protect the project.
If you're listening right now, think about your own daily workflow. Have you ever received an email draft from a colleague that was just completely off base?
Oh, we all have.
Right. You could kick it back, schedule a quick call, explain why it's wrong, wait for them to redo it. Or you could just take the 5 minutes to rewrite it yourself and hit send.
And people almost always choose the 5 minutes.
We've all done it. The friction of initiating a formal complaint or correction process always feels much heavier in the moment than just fixing the typo yourself.
Yeah, and that internal logic makes sense for a single typo. But those 5 minutes compound.
How so?
While the 5-minute rewrite turns into an hour fixing a spreadsheet, which then turns into an afternoon rebuilding a slide deck. It eventually creates a chronic state of low-grade anxiety where the top performers are hypervigilant.
Constantly waiting for this person to drop the ball so they could dive and catch it.
Exactly. And the source material points out a fascinating dynamic regarding this. When this mediocre employee was eventually let go, the team wasn't surprised in the slightest.
They were relieved, right?
Overwhelmingly relieved. They had noticed the performance gap almost immediately, but they stayed entirely silent about it for months.
But wait, why the collective silence, though? I mean, if I am doing a colleague's job for them week after week, I feel like I'd eventually want to raise a flag to HR or my boss.
You'd think so, right?
Yeah. Why would a group of high performers just quietly suffer?
Because silence in a team dynamic is rarely a sign of agreement or harmony. It is almost always assumption.
Assumption of what?
The team assumed that leadership already knew about the underperformance. They figured the boss had access to the metrics and saw the final output. Therefore, they assumed leadership either had a secret plan to address it or they were intentionally letting it slide for political reasons.
Oh, wow. So they just figured it was above their pay grade.
Exactly. Also, high performers specifically hate complaining. Raising a flag in a remote setting means scheduling a formal one-on-one, putting it on a calendar, and essentially accusing a coworker over Zoom.
Yeah, that feels incredibly confrontational.
So they just put their heads down and do the extra work?
It's like structural damage in a house.
Right.
You never actually see the termites chewing through the wood inside the walls.
Right.
You just walk into your living room one day and wonder why the floor is sagging. The team acts as those floorboards, silently taking on all this extra weight, groaning under the pressure, trying to keep the entire house standing.
While management stands in the front yard admiring the fresh coat of paint.
Exactly.
Oh.
Completely oblivious to the rot underneath. So if the team is so good at hiding the structural damage and absorbing the shock, what finally causes the floor to cave in?
External consequences.
What wakes leadership up from this illusion?
It's always an external trigger. Internal friction like one employee spending 3 hours fixing another spreadsheet can be ignored or masked by a dedicated team for a very long time. But external triggers demand a reckoning.
Like a client complaining.
Yes. In the case study we're dissecting, it took a missed deliverable that directly affected a client to force leadership's hand. As long as the pain was localized to the internal team, it was invisible.
But the moment a client sent an angry email asking where their project was,
The containment field broke. Leadership finally had to investigate.
so when leadership finally takes a crowbar to those floorboards and looks underneath, what do they actually find? Because we established earlier this person wasn't maliciously setting fires or screaming at clients.
No, they didn't find glaring failures. They found a deeply frustrating pattern of quiet mediocrity.
Quiet mediocrity.
Yeah, it wasn't one catastrophic failure they could point to and say, aha, you broke the server, you're fired. When they audited months of work, they found 100 tiny instances of work that technically met the absolute bare minimums.
But consistently failed the actual standard required to be effective.
Exactly. The reports were submitted, but the data wasn't verified. The client emails were sent, but the tone was sloppy.
Which plunges us right into the HR nightmare that our sources call the documentation trap.
Oh, it is a nightmare.
Because when a manager uncovers 100 tiny failures instead of one big one, they suddenly realize they are paralyzed.
Right, because up until that client complaint, the only warnings were informal. A team member mentioning they were slightly frustrated with a handoff. A manager feeling a weird vibe about a project's pace.
So there was absolutely no paper trail.
None. Nobody had officially documented that deliverables were consistently 10% below standard. So when leadership finally made the agonizing decision to fire this person, human resources stepped in and stopped them.
Wow. Because without a paper trail, firing someone is a massive liability.
Exactly.
I mean, HR's job is to protect the company from wrongful termination risks. If you fire someone out of the blue and their performance reviews just say adjusting to the role, HR won't let you do it.
No, they forced the manager into PIP purgatory, the performance improvement plan.
So instead of solving the problem today, leadership has to spend the next 90 days retroactively reconstructing a timeline of mediocrity.
Yes, painstakingly documenting every single mistake just to justify a decision they already made.
And the real tragedy here. The good employees have to carry the weight for another 3 months while management builds the case.
And that delay just tortures the best people on the team. This is why the sources emphasize a golden rule for remote leadership.
What is it?
If a concern is real enough for you to notice and feel annoyed by, it is real enough to write down in real time. You cannot wait for the house to collapse to start taking notes on the termites.
Okay, I understand the logic, but let's look at the reality of being a manager.
Right.
If I manage a remote team and I write down every single time someone is 5 minutes late to a stand-up, or every time they use the wrong font on a slide deck, I am going to feel like an incredibly toxic, overbearing micromanager.
Sure, that makes sense.
How does a leader build a paper trail for mediocrity without creating a culture of total paranoia?
It requires distinguishing between tracking activity and tracking outcomes.
Okay, break that down for us.
Micromanagement is building a secret dossier of petty grievances. Documenting that Jane was 4 minutes late to the call and her Slack status was yellow for an hour is toxic.
Right. That just creates resentment.
Exactly. Effective documentation focuses entirely on the business impact. Instead, you document for the third consecutive week the marketing report was submitted without the required Q3 projections, requiring the data team to work late on a Friday to complete it.
Oh, I see. You aren't nitpicking their time management.
No, you are objectively tracking a pattern of missed expectations that fundamentally impacts the business and the rest of the team.
That makes a lot of sense. But let's talk about the psychology of the leaders themselves for a second.
It's a huge factor.
Even after the client is angry, and even after they go through the exhausting work of documenting the outcomes, pulling the trigger is still excruciating.
It really is.
The decision is made. The paper trail's finally there. But leaders will still find excuses to wait just one more week. Why is the hesitation to fire someone so incredibly powerful?
Firing someone is a profound emotional hurdle. I mean, nobody enjoys altering the course of someone's livelihood, and those conversations are deeply uncomfortable.
Of course.
But beneath that basic human empathy, there is a complex psychological barrier regarding ego. Firing this person means the leader has to look in the mirror and admit a failure. They have to admit that their hiring process was flawed or that their judgment during the probation period was wrong. It's a formal admission of a delayed, poor decision.
It's basically the ultimate sunk cost fallacy.
Yes, exactly.
Think about going to the movie theater. You drive 20 minutes across town, you pay $15 of the ticket, and you buy the ridiculously expensive bucket of popcorn.
The $20 popcorn.
Right. 30 minutes into the film, you realize the plot is complete garbage, the acting is wooden, and you are having a miserable time. But you sit there in the dark for another 2 hours because you already spent the money and the time.
You endure the pain to justify the investment.
Exactly. As a leader, you fought for the headcount budget. You spent 6 weeks interviewing candidates. You spent a month onboarding this person, setting up their payroll, shipping them a company MacBook.
So much upfront investment.
Letting them go means walking back into the lobby, throwing the popcorn in the trash, and starting the excruciating process all over again. You convince yourself that if you just sit in the dark a little longer, the movie will miraculously get better.
That analogy perfectly captures the leadership paralysis. But before a leader finally walks out of the theater and terminates the employee, the sources provide a brilliant diagnostic tool.
Oh, what is it?
It's a way to check if this is truly the employee's fault or if the manager actually directed a terrible movie.
I like that.
Before you can ethically or practically attribute the failure to the employee, a leader must ask themselves 3 uncomfortable questions.
Okay, what are they?
Did this person have unequivocally clear expectations? Did they have adequate support? And did they have reasonable time to adapt?
Okay, let's pause on that second one. What does adequate support actually look like remotely? Because we established earlier, they can't just lean over a cubicle wall to ask for help.
Right. Adequate support remotely means documented processes. It means clear onboarding wikis, accessible standard operating procedures, and a dedicated point of contact they can ask questions without feeling like a burden.
So there has to be an infrastructure.
Yes. If the manager can honestly look at the situation and say yes to all 3, the employee knew the standard, they had the resources, and we gave them 6 months, then it is a genuine fundamental mismatch.
The role and the person simply do not fit.
Exactly.
But if the answer is no to any of those,
If the answer is no, if the expectations shifted every Tuesday, if the onboarding document was a broken Google Drive link, and they were thrown to the wolves on day 1, then it is not an employee failure.
it is a management failure.
Firing them won't solve the problem because you will just hire a replacement, drop them into the exact same broken machine, and wonder why they also fail.
That diagnostic forces a level of accountability that can completely change a team's dynamic.
It really does.
So if the old system of just watching people in an office is what got us into this mess, how do we fix the machine? How do modern leaders redesign their systems to measure the invisible work so we don't have to wait for a client to scream before we realize the floorboards are rotting?
We have to fundamentally change the questions we ask in our regular touch points.
Like the weekly check-ins.
Right. The traditional one-on-one meeting is almost entirely focused on individual progress. A manager asks, what tasks did you check off your list this week?
Which just measures the treadmill.
Exactly. That question only measures the treadmill. To catch the hidden tax, the check-ins must shift to focus on workload distribution.
Oh, so instead of asking what they did, you're asking how the work actually got done.
Yes, a leader needs to proactively hunt for the team members who are quietly picking up the slack. You ask things like, where are you experiencing friction in the handoffs this week?
Or, have you found yourself stepping outside your core responsibilities to assist with anyone else's deliverables lately?
Exactly. You aren't asking them to rat out a coworker. You are asking them to describe the reality of their daily workflow.
You know, if you're managing a team right now, think about the power of that subtle shift. By asking your top performer where the bottlenecks are, you give them permission to talk about the extra weight they're carrying without forcing them to sound like a complainer.
It's so empowering for them.
It transforms a standard, boring status update into an active diagnostic of the team's health. You are actively searching for the termites before they compromise the foundation.
And this operational shift connects to a massive long-term paradigm change.
Which is?
Remote work is no longer a temporary patch. It is the permanent architecture of modern business, which means we're finally being forced to abandon the archaic practice of inferring performance from presence.
Let's be honest, seeing someone sitting at a desk from 9 to 5 with their eyes open never actually meant they were doing good work anyway.
Not at all.
It just meant they were physically in the room and awake.
The physical office allowed managers to be deeply lazy. We saw a body in a chair, we heard the clacking of a keyboard, and we assumed productivity.
And remote work strips away that visual crutch.
Completely. The future of management relies exclusively on measuring output and impact. Does the work meet the standard? Is it delivered on time? Does it move the needle for the business?
If the answer is no, no amount of prompt, Slack replies, or enthusiastic Zoom backgrounds can mask the mediocrity.
Perfectly said.
Let's pull all these threads together for you, the listener. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive today. First, beware the remote mask. Activity is absolutely not performance.
Right.
Second, the cost of delaying a hard decision doesn't just vanish. It is paid in full with interest by your best people who are quietly absorbing the shock.
They're paying the tax.
Third, silence from your team is not a sign of harmony. It's usually an assumption that you, the leader, already know what you're doing. And finally, track outcomes, not activity, to avoid the HR nightmare of the documentation trap.
Those principles are the absolute foundation for stopping the slow bleed before it starts.
They really are. But we want to leave you with one final thought to hold over, something to take with you after you hit pause today.
Okay, what is it?
We spent this deep dive talking about the frustration of fixing typos, the duplicated effort, and the pain of missed client deadlines. But if your team is constantly acting as the structural floorboards, bearing the weight of a mediocre employee month after month, what ultimately happens to your top performers?
The floorboards snap.
That's the real danger. If you keep ignoring the check engine light because having a difficult conversation is uncomfortable, the ultimate hidden cost isn't just a lost client or a delayed project.
No, it's worse.
It's that your most capable, brilliant talent gets burned out and leaves. They will simply take their skills to an organization where they aren't forced to carry someone else's weight.
And when the dust settles, you are left completely alone with the exact mediocre employee you should have let go a year ago.
You ignored the engine noise for so long that the wheels completely fell off.
It's a heavy realization, but critical for anyone trying to build a resilient, high-performing remote culture today.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. We appreciate your time, your curiosity, and for sitting in the room with us as we untangle these complex realities. Keep a close eye on those check engine lights, check your floorboards, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.
Thank you for listening to The Remote Revolution. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and share it with other professionals who are building the future of work. To learn more about how Virtual Mojo helps businesses grow with highly trained virtual assistants and remote support teams, visit www.virtualmojo.com. For inquiries or collaborations, reach out to us at contact@virtualmojo.com. Until next time, keep building smarter systems and embracing the future of work.